Hi, my name is Beth Mills. I'm one of the autism specialists in Randolph County, and I am presenting to you today about guardianship. Transition to adulthood is something I'm super passionate about and have really enjoyed learning more about. This was supposed to be a part of our transition fair that we hold every year. We were going to have special guests present on this, but since we had to shut down and we weren't able to hold it, we still felt it was very valuable information to share with you as parents as you try to make decisions for your son or daughter in the years to come as they become an adult. The purpose is just to help give you information. The process of guardianship is a very personal one, and there's no right or wrong way. It is based on your needs as a family and your child's needs. And I also wanted to say that I am a part of a team. This was not done solely by myself. I work with Janie Davis and Jenna Lineberry, who are both program facilitators at the high school level and transition coordinators. So any one of us can be a resource for you if you have questions, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I will go ahead and say that after this training, there'll be a link that you can go to give us feedback, but also in order to get sent the literature and information from this training. So if you would please, it will take like 3 seconds to do. It is on our homepage, but I'll talk about it at the very end. So supported decision making. Supported decision making is the new kind of terminology you're hearing out in the world in regards to guardianship. And so this again is just to inform you of how some of the laws have changed and some of the opportunities for families as they think about these decisions they're going to have to potentially make for their son or daughter before they turn 18. We're really glad you came and that you're watching this. Again, this talks about the survey link. And if you have questions, feel free to put them in the survey. So again, since this is pre-recorded, normally we do these live, we wanted you to think about, and even if you pause the video and just think, what does guardianship mean to you? Some of you may have heard about this. Some of you may have dealt with guardianship for an elderly parent, but just reflect a little bit about what guardianship means. And we're going to dive into it. You can see how much you already know. Before we start really diving in deep, we wanted to kind of talk through terminology so that we're all, as we're throwing out different terms, we wanted to make sure we all had the same understanding. So guardianship, what is it? Guardianship is a legal relationship in which a person or an agency is appointed by the court to make decisions on the act or on the behalf of somebody else who has been determined to not have adequate capacity to make the decisions for themselves. And this could be to manage personal affairs, property, or both. And a court process is required in order to create a guardian. The word ward is what we call an individual who has been determined to be incompetent and therefore has somebody appointed to make their decisions. And that's what this whole process is kind of about. Depending on the level of need of your child, thinking about as they turn 18, like anybody else, any other adult, they are legally responsible for themselves. And if you feel like they will be unable to make those decisions, this is the process you will have to consider, and they could potentially become a ward of you, their parent or guardian. So that's just a word you might hear. Also, a huge thing that's been a push for the last so many years in education is self-determination. And that is the freedom to make your own choices. And that is something that is embedded and intertwined with our standards in school. We're really pushing and wanting to graduate children, no matter what ability level, for them to be able to make their own decisions and have a voice. So that's an important thing to think about. All right, so historically, we wanted to talk about guardianship because some of you may know about guardianship, but you may have an understanding under the old model. So it used to be that in the United States, guardianship was basically full guardianship. That was really the only consideration. So you either were totally incompetent and unable to make any decisions, or you weren't. that gave a guardian power to make every decision for a person. And this was a quote in some of the literature and presentations we had gone to about this topic. And they say, as long as the law permits full guardianship, courts prefer to use it, because sometimes what's the expression? You can't teach old dogs new tricks. If it's allowed and is what we've always done, then it's kind of easier than thinking outside of the box and really digging in deep to determine if a child or almost adult can make some decisions for themselves. So that's just something to be aware of. What's the role of a guardian? So they're basically a surrogate decision maker and an advocate for an individual or the ward. They've been determined by a court to make these decisions because the person has been declared incompetent. They are responsible for the ward's care and comfort. They are charged with living arrangements for them, training, employment, medical and financial care. And they're supposed to support the decisions, hopes, dreams, and goals of those individuals they're in charge of, not just make decisions without talking to them. So some false assumptions based on this law that kind of have gotten us where we are and why there was such a push to change some of these laws. So there was the false assumption that for individuals, especially with more severe disabilities, that we really needed to err on the side of total and absolute safety being more important than decision making that could be reasonable risk. Meaning, please hear me, I want my children safe and sound, and I'm saying it's important for your children to be safe and sound. But if you think about, depending how old you are, you've probably made some decisions in your life that were more risky than others. Sometimes they pay off in a positive way. Sometimes it's a big fail and you learn from them. But that's part of learning, is learning to get over those trees in our path. And then you can learn from them when it doesn't go right. And so because people have disabilities, sometimes people have assumed that it's more important to make sure that their absolute safety is intact versus maybe a reasonable risk, like their feelings might get hurt or they might lose their job. Something that's not, of course, going to alter and change their entire life. Another false assumption is it's not necessary to consult the person under guardianship. So sometimes the situation was these guardians were making decisions for the ward without even considering their dreams or their desires or their wishes. And another huge misconception is that institutional placements were preferred by the court and guardians, as opposed to looking at independent solutions or community integrated living options. So that was kind of some things when they dug deep and looked at some of the statistics with guardianship, people had false understandings about. And one quote we really liked is, when we mean the most well is when we have to be the most careful. And I'll just let you think about that and how it might apply to your situation or your experiences. Under North Carolina law, guardianship may be appropriate in limited circumstances where a guardian will afford the individual fuller capacity for exercising his or her rights. So guardianship was supposed to be more of a support to work alongside, but that's really not the way it has been historically and hasn't been put into practice in that way. So a big group out of Raleigh did some research and worked to change some of the laws and make it so that we had a little more checks and balances and opportunities for individuals with disabilities as they transition to adulthood. So research, we know that people under guardianship can experience a significant negative impact on their physical and mental health, longevity, ability to function, and reports of subjective well-being. So this was just when the group out of Carolina or Chapel Hill did their research. There was this trend where when you take the ability for somebody to make decisions for themselves, that there was a negative impact on their life. And please understand that we are not saying that it is a bad thing to take full guardianship. There are definitely situations where that is in the best interest of everybody involved. we're just wanting to present you with new information, new legislation, so that you can think about it and decide what is best for you. And this is one piece that could potentially be some negative impact to an individual when they're declared incompetent and can no longer make their decisions. Felt like this was very important to, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but what research showed was that a typical ward, so a typical person who's been declared incompetent, has fewer rights than a typical convicted felon. And so I just felt that that was something super powerful to think about, that sometimes maybe our fears or our worries of what could happen limit us in allowing people to make decisions for themselves when they have disabilities, especially more severe disabilities. And I think we can get in the practice of allowing people to make some choices from a young age on up so that they can practice and get better, and allow them to maybe have some of those rights still, instead of just taking them all away. So you can read over this on your own. So the intention of the law was that guardianship truly was never needed just because someone's IQ was at a certain level. So when we say IQ, that means intellectual ability. So just because they have an intellectual disability, they cannot make decisions for themselves. That is not a true statement. Just because someone's sick does not mean they can absolutely make no decisions. Because you need a little help. Who out there needs a little help sometimes? I do. As I have become an adult and a mom, I probably need more help now than ever from my mom or my dad in making decisions and reaching out to those that experience stuff. So just because you might need a little help doesn't mean you can't make any decisions. It shouldn't be done just because it's the way it's always been done, and it shouldn't be done only for your own good. When we're considering taking guardianship over someone, it's a huge decision to make, and we want to make sure we're looking at it from all angles. So problems with the original law. We know that limited guardianship, which that is the ability to still make some decisions. You go through the court process and maybe allow the young adult with an intellectual disability to be in control of his medical or his financial, if that's a strength and a skill they have, instead of just taking away all their choices. So we know that that's been very underutilized for the last so many years. We know that it depends which clerk you go to, will depend on what's usually done. So one thing the research out of Raleigh found was when they took a map of North Carolina and looked at who would do the percentages of full guardianship versus limited, there were trends based on who the judge was or who the clerk was. And so it shouldn't be that way. It should be there should be more of a streamlined process instead of, well, I live in this county, so it's always full guardianship versus I live in this county and we look at other creative options. We know that a part of guardianship is sometimes getting evaluations to determine if people can make decisions for themselves, and those can be really hard to get. It can be hard to get the people to do it. It can just be a lengthy process. We also know that once a guardian has been appointed, that it's really hard to go the other way. It's really hard to remove a guardian. And sometimes there's not an alternative for an individual. They might not have a long list of people that could potentially be their guardian. And we also know that it's really hard. Sadly, there's some circumstances where there's guardians in place that don't have the best interest of the individual in mind. And it's really hard to get any sort of recourse on those who have been significantly neglected by their guardians. And so that's scary. We know that individuals who were under full guardianship many years ago have never been reconsidered for a partial guardianship. So again, the way, if you want to read the true law, it does talk about it should be revisited, but that's not what happens. Unless someone goes and advocates, or the individual with disabilities is able to really fight for themselves, those conversations never happen. So we might have made a decision at 18 about Beth, and she might have really needed me to be her guardian at the time, but now she has a job, she's taking classes at Davidson County Community College, and she is really rocking making some decisions. Well, should I continue to make all her decisions, or should I start maybe reconsidering that and allowing her to have more power over her life? I'm not saying one's right or wrong, but as adults, we're always still learning and progressing. And so it should have never been forever, like a decision made and we never talk about it again. We also know that a lot of guardians sometimes get thrown into the situation. Best case scenario, you have a parent, someone who understands an individual with disabilities, but sometimes that's not the situation, and there's really no requirement for training on how to support and work with a person with learning differences for the guardian. And to me, that's hard to really understand. And we also know that right now, like I mentioned earlier, a big push in our instruction and curriculum in school is decision-making and self-determination, kids making I can statements, setting goals. And so we're teaching kids these things in school, then they're turning 18 and we're taking all those decisions away. And so do we need to look at this differently? So we're not going to camp here, and it's not live, so we can't interact, but we wanted you to reflect as a parent on what's your favorite right. And when we did this training for teachers, you get, right to bear arms, freedom of speech, you get all these answers, which are, of course, important rights, but even just where and what you're going to eat that day is a right we have as Americans. Where you want to go to church, if you want to go to church, if you want to get married, if you want to have children. Those are all rights. We make decisions every day that are part of our freedoms. And so don't only think of those big rights, think of everyday decisions, what you're going to wear, what you can afford to spend on your hair, whatever it might be. What are some of those things that you really enjoy being able to practice? And we talked about how many things we can't do right now. And a lot of people are saying, oh, well, we don't have, our rights are being stripped because we can't do this, that, and the other. So we kind of have an idea of what it would feel like when you can't make some of your own decisions like you maybe would want to. And one famous quote through some of the research we came out of reading was, are your rights really worth anything if you aren't allowed to use them? And so we'll let you think about that. So this young person, John Paul, said, he had learning differences, said, I am my choices. I cannot not choose. If I do not choose, that is still a choice. If faced with inevitable circumstances, we still choose how we are in those circumstances. So that's just something to think about. So the benefits of self-determination, so the ability to make decisions for yourself. The research out of Carolina just had a wealth of statistics and information that came out of it, comparing those who had the ability to make choices and those who didn't. So we know that people who are able to make decisions have healthier lives, they are more independent, they are more well-adjusted, and a huge one is they're better able to recognize and resist abuse. So those are all benefits to help start allowing individuals to make decisions and considering partial guardianships as they turn into adults. So some more research on self-determination. So we know that when people are denied the ability to make choices, they feel more helpless and hopeless. They can experience low self-esteem and feelings of inadequacy. We know that when they were able to make decisions, they had improved psychological health and increased care of their needs. We know that overall, I'm not going to read all these to you, but overall, they just had a better quality of life when they were able to have an active role in decisions for themselves. And a huge one for me, which is like a training for another day, is that we know that women with intellectual disabilities exercise more self-determination. If they do exercise more self-determination, they're less likely to be abused. And the numbers for victims of sexual assault and just exploitation, I guess is the word I'm looking for, of those with disabilities is extremely high for women because they don't realize they can say no. They aren't able to make some of those choices, so they don't know that their voice can be heard in that sense. And so, like I said, that's a whole another day, but it's in the high 80s, 80% of women with intellectual disabilities. We know those that have an intellectual or developmental disability that don't have a guardian are more likely to have a paid job, live independently, have friends other than just their staff or family, go on dates and socialize in their community, and practice the religion of their choice. So, where do we go from here? We have all this research showing the positive benefits of being able to make some decisions for yourself. And we know that there were some definite kinks in the chain as far as the old way of looking at things as total guardianship or none. So what do? We know by talking through all this that some people do need support as they age due to their disability. You know, your child, if you're watching this, is probably a part of our Exceptional Children's Department, and they probably have an individualized education plan or an IEP, and they've had some support all through school maybe to help them navigate school. And so we know that that's going to continue, maybe even more so as they become an adult. We know that full guardianship can result in decreased quality of life. And we know when we increase self-determination and allow them to make choices, that research shows that those individuals have a better quality of life. So this means we need a means of increasing self-determination and still provide some support. So we're going to show you a video of this amazing woman named Jenny Hatch. And at the end of this PowerPoint, there are a ton of resources. I tend to talk fast, but you also don't want to be here all day. And there are some little learning modules you can watch from this amazing lawyer who actually was Jenny Hatch's lawyer. If you're like, wow, she went over that really fast, I want to hear it again, you can either watch this video again or you can go to some of the links. But again, you'll have to reach out to us on that survey so we can send you this PowerPoint via email. But Jenny Hatch was a young individual, or she was really an adult with Down syndrome. You can see her on the PowerPoint, who was an independent individual up until she got into a car accident. And then her rights and guardianship kind of came under scrutiny. And the court appointed her a guardian because they didn't feel like she could make decisions for herself because of her disability. She had a job, she lived by herself, had this car accident, and then all of her rights were stripped from her. And because she had a good circle and support system, she fought it. She went to court and said, no, I want to be able to make decisions for myself. And so we're going to watch her story. And one of her quotes is, I don't need a guardian, I just need some help. And like I said earlier, who doesn't need a little help every once in a while? So here we go.
Decision making. My name is Jonathan Martinez. I am the Senior Director for Law and Policy at the Burton Blatt Institute of Syracuse University. In this session, we're going to introduce the concept of supported decision making, and I'm going to tell you about a friend of mine who makes use of it. On your screen right now is a picture of Margaret Hatch. She goes by Jenny. When I met Jenny, she was 29 years old. Jenny will tell you she's a high school graduate. She'll tell you she was president of her class. She had been working in the same job for 5 years at the time, a regular job in the community, making regular wages, paying regular taxes. She had a social life at church she went to, friends she saw. She was politically active. She was known in her community, and her community knew her. Until she got in a car accident. Because shortly after Jenny got in a car accident, because she has Down syndrome, she was placed under a guardianship. On your screen right now is language from the guardianship order. I'm not going to bore you with the entire order, but what I can tell you is that there were 4 separate paragraphs in that order saying the guardians could choose where Jenny lived. Jenny had lived in her own apartment before the accident, her own apartment, but they could choose where she lived, including an institution. There were 3 paragraphs saying that the guardians could choose what health care she got or whether she even got health care. But what's on your screen is the last paragraph in that order. Take a look at it. It says that the guardians can decide who Jenny sees, what kind of health care she gets, what kind of support she gets, what kind of education she gets, what kind of therapeutic treatment she gets, and where she lives. Looking at that language, Jenny Hatch have any rights left? Was Jenny Hatch a citizen? Remember when we started these sessions, I asked you what was your favorite right? What rights were most important to you? Did Jenny have any rights left? Why? Well, it was because a psychologist examined her and found that Jenny needs help. In fact, that's a quote. The psychologist said, Jenny's going to need assistance to make health care decisions regarding her health care, her living arrangements, and, quote, such like that. She will need someone to guide her and give her assistance. When I met Jenny, I looked at her records, and you know what? I realized that psychologist was 100% right. Jenny does need assistance to understand legal issues. She absolutely needs assistance to understand medical issues and monetary issues and in her day-to-day life. You know what that makes her? That makes Jenny Hatch a person. Ain't we all Jenny Hatch? Is there anyone watching this video who makes every decision for themselves without getting help, without ever doing research, without getting advice? If there is, please contact me off list. I would love to get some help from you. But what we had to do was we had to show a judge who, like everyone else, was used to 2,000 years of history that said when a person with a disability needs help doing something, they must not be able to do anything. We need to show that judge that there's another way, that Jenny is just like all of us, that we all need a little bit of help. And on your screen is the way we did it. On your screen is a definition of supported decision-making. Now, I'm not looking at the screen right now. I can do this from memory. Supported decision-making is a recognized alternative to guardianship where people with disabilities use trusted friends, family members, and associates to help them understand the situations and choices they face so they can make their own decisions without the need for a guardian. It's a lot of words, wasn't it? It's a lot of words, and I knew that by heart because I wrote them. I was an idiot when I wrote that. I mean, poor Dr. Blank, who had to be the lead author on that, had to associate himself with my language, where what I should have said to that judge was, how do you make decisions? What do you do? What do you do when the doctor speaks jargon at you? When the doctor says you've got a subluxation in your cervical brachial area that we can treat conservatively with a course of anti-inflammatories or aggressively with intervention, and you say, huh? And the doctor goes, you got an owie in your neck. Would you like Motrin or surgery? And when you hear that, you say to yourself, I get it now. I can make a decision. When I go to the auto mechanic and the auto mechanic says, John, you got a problem. You must have a leak because your headlight fluid's a quart low and your muffler bearings are rattling around something fierce. And it's going to cost $1,000 to fix. And I go to my friend, and my friend knows about cars. I don't. And I say, Jeff, what should I do? It's $1,000, man. I love this car. Should I get it fixed? Should I put the money toward a new car? And Jeff goes, dude, there's no such thing as headlight fluid or muffler bearings. You're getting ripped off. And I said, thank you. I understand. Because that's what we do. That's what people do. When they don't understand something, they get help. You go to Google, you go to a friend, you go to an expert, and you ask questions. You say, help me out here because I don't understand. And when you do that, you're being smart. You're being wise. You're being judicious and getting a second opinion. When Jenny Hatch does it, when a person with disabilities does it, society thinks they're weak. Because when Jenny Hatch says, I don't understand something, help me out here, well, society assumes that because you need help doing something, you must not be able to do anything. And for 2,000 years, the response has been to take away the right to do everything. So supported decision-making, after all those words, is just a fancy way to say getting help when you need it, just like you and I do. Thank you for joining us for the session. In the next session,
We're going to watch the next one really quick so you can hear what happened with Jenny.
Hello and welcome back to our introduction and guide to supported decision-making. My name is Jonathan Martinez. I am the Senior Director for Law and Policy at the Burton Blatt Institute of Syracuse University. In this session, we're going to talk more about the Justice for Jenny case, about how Jenny uses supported decision-making and how her case wound up and what her case can tell us about supported decision-making and the way that we can move forward. The last session, I told you what supported decision-making is, a fancy phrase for getting help when we need it, for getting assistance understanding the choices we have to make so we can make our best choices. And you and I do that every single day. And just like you and me, Jenny did too. we found out that years before, Jenny had signed a power of attorney, of like a 40-page document with all kinds of technical terms in it. And we asked, if you think Jenny can't make decisions, how in the world did she sign a power of attorney? And this was the answer. We explained it to her. We took the time. The attorney took the time. We gave her the opportunity to ask questions. We gave her explanations of the terms. And it was not until we and the attorney were 100% sure that she understood the document that we agreed she should sign it. And we saw that Jenny had consented to surgery after her car accident and said, if Jenny can't make decisions, how in the world did she consent to surgery? And we were told the doctor explained it to her, and we explained it to her. Jenny has a little fear of needles, so we said, Jenny, there'll only be one needle, and when you wake up, it'll be gone, and you'll feel better. And the doctor said what they would be doing. And then Jenny understood, and she signed the paper herself. We asked her Medicaid coordinator, how could Jenny be involved in her Medicaid plan of care if she can't make decisions? And we were told, we practice person-centered planning. So every page, we went over it with her, and we did not go to the next page until we were convinced that she understood the last page. And time after time, and decision after decision, doing applications for Medicaid, and applications for paratransit, and assigning the right to receive records, time after time, we heard that Jenny had been explained the decision she had to make and what she was facing, and when she understood it, she made the decision. Jenny used supported decision-making. So after 6 days of trial, where people came from around the country to support Jenny, where people argued that Jenny is using supported decision-making, she does not need a guardian, there was a final argument, and I was Jenny's attorney, and I got to do what all attorneys want to do, which is wave our arms for 45 minutes and pound the table and plead. And the judge said, I'll be back in 15 minutes. He came back an hour later. And during that hour, I was telling Jenny, we're going to lose. Prepare yourself. This is a difficult case, but we're going to keep fighting, and you are strong, and we can get through this, and you can get through this. And Jenny kept saying, he's going to send me home. He's going to send me home. And I said, Jenny, you just keep saying that. And the judge came back on, and he started reading his order. And the first part of the order was all about why Jenny needs a guardian. At that point, I've got my arm on her shoulder, and I'm saying, Jenny, you can fight your way through this, and we can get through this. And she said, he's sending me home. And then the judge said this word. He said, however. And there is no lawyer in the world who wants to be on the wrong side of however, but thank God we were on the right side. Because what the judge said is, yes, Jenny, you need a guardian over two things and two things only, medical care and safety issues. So here's what was going to happen. I'm going to make the guardians the people who you want to be, the people who you want to live with. You see, Jenny wanted to live with friends. And her friends came to court to support her, to say, they spent their own money on their own attorney, to say that Jenny doesn't need a guardian, but if she does need one, if you think she should need one, let it be us, because we're the ones who'll support her. And the judge said, you two, Kelly Morris, Jim Talbert, you will be her guardians for 1 year, and 1 year only. And after that 1 year, the guardianship will be over. And that guardianship has been over since August of 2014. But for that 1 year, the judge said, your job, guardians, is to assist Jenny in making her own decisions. Your job is to help Jenny use supported decision-makings, because the job of the guardian is not to make decisions instead of the person, but to make the decisions the person would make, to make decisions with the person. And what that means is what you see on your screen behind me. Jenny got justice that day. And that's my favorite picture in the whole wide world. That's Jenny in front. Look at her. She's going home. She's been in a group home for almost a year. And that's her right there, smile on the face of someone who's been told, you can go home today. And that's me behind her in soft focus. I've never looked better. The question that this case asks, Jenny's case begs this question. Why did Jenny get justice? Well, the easy answer, the tempting answer is because she's awesome, and she is. But that's not the right answer. Because Jenny is awesome, but here's the thing. All Jenny wanted to do was live her life. She was living a regular life in her own apartment, with her own job, with her own social life. Jenny, there's nothing special about the life she wanted to live. We hear all the time a phrase called inspiration porn, about people with disabilities being treated like they're special when they do things everyone else does. That's not Jenny Hatch. Jenny wanted to live her own life the way she had been living. So there was nothing special there. The one thing that was truly set her apart was that she didn't give up. She was told time and again, get used to your new life, and she wouldn't. And what we know is that most people denied their right to make choices will give up. Jenny Hatch never did, and that's one of the reasons she got justice. But there's other reasons, and I'm afraid it makes me sad to say far more important reasons. It was because she had a ton of help. She had friends who I told you came and supported her and spent their own money on their own lawyer. I was Jenny's lawyer. They had to get their own lawyer to fight. She had experts come from around the country and submit briefs from around the country saying why she should have the opportunity to make her own decisions. She is incredibly telegenic, so the media loved her, and she had a judge who listened and learned. You know what that means? It means she got lucky. Means Jenny Hatch got lucky, because you take away any of those things and she's in that group home right now. I told you before, there's 1 million more people under guardianship today than there were 20 years ago. You know what that means? It means there's a whole lot of Jennys and not a whole lot of justice. Thank you for joining us on the next session.
So like I said, this is these links will be on the PowerPoint. So if you want to watch more from him or rewatch anything, you'll be able to. So we thought her story was very inspiring and just a good one to hear. So we're not going to get in these too heavy, but alternates to full guardianship. So as a parent, you need to consider the various areas of your child's life and decisions involved in those little pieces. So whether it be their health, whether it be medical, whether it be living, start thinking about all those areas of their life, and maybe they're balancing out strengths and weaknesses within those areas to determine if they do require someone to make all of their decisions, or are there parts of their lives that they can be in control of with support, like he was discussing. So a way forward. So we know a recognized alternative to guardianship through which people with disabilities use friends, family members, and other professionals to help them understand situations and choices they face so that they can make their own decisions without the need of a guardian. We know that everybody, no matter what their strengths and weaknesses are, have a will and preferences, right? That's what makes the world great. We're all unique. We know that we can provide individuals with supports and accommodations necessary to make decisions. We know that support people can explain when needed the issues, the potential choices, and the consequences of those choices to try to help interpret the signs or preferences of an individual so that they can help support them in making decisions. And when you think about doing like a supported decision-making model, building in safeguards. Who are the trusted people in your child's life? How big is their circle? That's an expression we talk about, because what research will show is the more impacted or severely severe a child's disability is, the smaller their circle can be. Sometimes it's just their family or their support staff, because they're not always as plugged into the community because they require so much help to be plugged in. And so, getting in with support, getting in with agencies, getting in with sports and leisure and coaches, and staying connected with teachers that you've really meshed well with can all be a part of your child's circle to help them as they transition to an adult, to help them make decisions versus being a guardian. We know that supported decision-making is something we all do every day, whether we have a disability or not. And it's something that recognizes a person's abilities and their limitations, their wants and needs, personal choices and preferences. So it's like a shift, mind shift. And so once we start accepting that people with disabilities and older adults have the right to make their own decisions, once we kind of can see that they accept that piece, the only question is, how do we support it? How do we move on from there? So one big thing is, no matter what you decide, full guardianship or limited, is that it's really important for you to take away, you've got a child that has a significant disability and you will take full guardianship. and that is totally acceptable and understandable. If you know that, but still you need to think about making decisions with that person, trying to gauge their preferences instead of making them for them, making sure that it's individualized to the person's wants and needs, respecting that person as a final decision maker. You can have formal and informal levels of these. And then understand that making a bad decision doesn't mean you can't make any. Because like I said earlier, I have made a lot of bad decisions in my life. But I feel like I've made a lot of good ones too. So limited guardianships are when an adult ward retains some of their rights that would otherwise be lost in full guardianship. And North Carolina law encourages clerks to consider this limited guardianship when looking at this process. We've listed out all the different levels and areas in which you can help support your son or daughter without taking full guardianship. These are other legal measures you can put in place to support them. And so we're not going to go into these. If you are thinking about this process and you feel like you need guidance, you definitely want to reach out to a clerk of court or maybe even a lawyer just to help you work through this. And you can see it goes all the way down to that supported decision making. So what does the process look like? As a parent, we felt like it was really important that you know this, because sometimes our parents aren't aware, and I have a lot of parents tell me it's an emotional process, whether you decide to take full guardianship or not, that it can be hard. And so we wanted to prepare you of what it looked like. So the process should begin around the time your child turns 17. That's a good time to start this formal process because it can take a little bit of time. And like right now, courts are shut down. And just like anybody, if you have a typical child that's turned 18, you know that with HIPAA and a lot of the rules, even with colleges, people will no longer talk to you as the parent because that child is already 18. They have to give you the right to look at their grades. They have to allow the doctor to talk to you. And even if your child is significantly handicapped, that will be the case when they turn 18 unless you've gone through this process. We had a parent come up to us last year at our transition fair, and they had just tried to make their daughter with epilepsy, she had an intellectual disability, a doctor's appointment. And when she called, they would not talk to the mom because she had already turned 18 and they were not allowed to. Even though her daughter had significant learning challenges, that process had not been started, and therefore that daughter could make her own decisions, which might have been okay. But from what I was getting from the mom, she didn't feel like it was okay. And they were starting that process much later than should have. So just keep that in mind. Right around 17 is when you should really start formally starting. There is a questionnaire that will be linked in here that is a really good, and maybe you do it every year, maybe looking at, it's available in other languages as well, but it might be good for you and your spouse to sit down and look at these areas of your child's life and every year revisit them. And it goes through all of these different areas like personal hygiene, nutrition, living, and you kind of answer those questions to help make decisions on guardianship. And that is going to be in this PowerPoint for you. Let me get back up to my PowerPoint. So once your child turns 17, you will petition for guardianship at the clerk of court office. There is a packet you will have to get to fill out. They are available online, but I do know they were making updates due to coronavirus. So you can either physically go to the clerk of court or look on the website. And it's just some formality paperwork, I guess. Once you have petitioned, a guardian ad litem will be assigned to your child. So that's somebody you are petitioning to take guardianship. And so someone will be assigned to your child to make sure their voice is heard, and kind of like a mediator almost, just to make sure that their best interests are being looked for. A huge thing is that your son or daughter will be served by a police officer. will be served papers. And so that can be a scary situation for kids, especially if they have fear of policemen. They're going to come serve them papers, tell them they're, being asked to come to court. And so if that is the route you go to, please reach out to your case managers, me as a support staff, Janie or Jenna. Sometimes we can write a social narrative to help prime that child that this is going to happen, so they know they didn't do anything wrong and they're not in trouble. But that is a piece to this process. Then there's an actual hearing. And so in that hearing, if you decide to take guardianship, this is the emotional part to it, is that it can be hard to stand in front of your child and claim them incompetent, depending on their ability level. And so being prepared for that, preparing your son or daughter for what the hearing will look like and what it will mean might be important depending on them. And again, we're happy to help in any way we can. And then after the hearing, the clerk of court decides the type of guardianship and who the guardian will be. These are all the people that potentially could be involved in a guardianship hearing. And we wanted to include the clerk of court for Randolph County with her email and the address of the building, in case you are closer to this process, like closer to 17 or even over 17 at this point, so you would know where to go to start this process. So another thing that's important, and we really touched on this for teachers, but as parents, you have your children home with you now, but you can start trying to help the practice of making decisions at home in just little ways to help them learn that their voice matters, to help them learn that they can have preferences and opinions. And so we just wanted to touch base on how you can teach this. So we know that people with intellectual disabilities, given more opportunities to make choices, are better at making decisions. I mean, that seems logical, right? So as far as how to support this, encourage problem solving, promoting goal setting. I worked with a young guy named Sam, who's going to be talking here in just a minute, and he wanted so badly, he graduated OCS to live on his own. And so we set small goals for him outside of school, because if he wanted to live on his own, he needed to be able to take medication on his own. So what kind of alarms could we purchase to help remind him? What kind of containers could we get to help him know what pills to take what day? So we kind of came around him and helped teach and set small little goals that he could check off to reach his big goal of living by himself. Fostering responsibility, promoting independence, encouraging self-advocacy and leadership, supporting their communication. We also know that having them participate, whether it be in outside clubs or sports, will help them be good at making decisions, making social connections, having high expectations and positive attitudes, modeling those important skills at home, like when you're trying to make a decision, talking out loud so they can hear the process and how you got to your choice. And a big one is connecting with others, finding ways to get them plugged in. So again, their circle's not so small, so that they have more people that can help support them in making decisions about their life. At school, we can look at some of these, which is student-led IEPs and even informed choice with Voc Rehab if you work with them. As far as IEPs go, if your child is already 14, you're aware, but if they're younger, this is important for you to know. Once a child turns 14, we start looking at their transition goals into adulthood. And we really start trying to make plans for the future, getting you as a parent to think about what that's going to look like and how we can help set goals and help you reach those dreams along with your child's dreams. We don't just talk to you, we talk to your child. So that starts happening at 14. And then at 17, we go over something called the transfer of rights. And that's basically just explained and the case manager will sign it. But that's talking about when the child turns 18, their rights will get transferred to them. So even if they're in a functional skills or extended content standard class, OCS, whatever it might be, when they turn 18, they are then the adult. And so the rights will be transferred. And so that's a really good reminder for you all. like, oh, that's that process that lady was talking about. I need to go to the clerk of court. So that happens around their IEP when they're 17 and going to be turning 18. And again, we start thinking broadly about goals at 14, but when they get into high school, we start writing specific goals in the areas of career, living, leisure, and education. And we work with your child on identifying and inventorying their strengths and weaknesses and helping them come up with goals, as well as your goals as their parent, and try to bring them together. And so this is a great time to think about self-determination and making decisions, to start really practicing that. And then I did ask, I have my friend Sam and his mother, who is a great advocate, and she's the executive director of the Arc of High Point, which is a nonprofit that supports families with children with learning differences, to kind of talk about their story. And so we're going to hear that. And this is Stephanie talking about guardianship with Sam. Oops. All right, I'm here today with my friend Stephanie, and she's going to share her journey, or really her son's journey, Sam, and guardianship, and kind of where they are now. So Steph, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about Sam to start?
Sure. So Sam is 21. Sam was diagnosed with autism when he was 3 years old. He was in self-contained classes all the way through until he hit high school, and then he was in the occupational course of study program. He is an innovations waiver holder. So in the state of North Carolina, you have a team around you for yearly meetings. And when it came to making a decision about guardianship for Sam, there were a lot of people in his circles at school and on his innovations waiver team. His psychologists were all recommending guardianship for Sam. And I think I'm in a unique position in that I work for the Arc of High Point, and I am around a lot of great self-advocate adults with disabilities and their families, and wonderful advocacy at the state and local levels of North Carolina, who gave me a different point of view. And I was able to meet people at conferences who had made different choices. Again, when it came down to the decision for Sam, a lot of the people around the table were saying, no, you have to do this. You really do have to get guardianship of Sam. And when it came right down to it, I think some of our decisions were going to be made for guardianship out of fear. The fear of what happens if Sam's behaviors get out of control in the community. What happens if he, got in trouble with the law? What would be the ramifications if we had guardianship or did not have guardianship? And I had a wonderful Sam's community navigator, a wonderful advocate in our corner, who really kind of played devil's advocate with me and the rest of the team when we were going to make those decisions. And Tawana Patterson has been Sam's friend in his corner since he started down the road of innovations waiver. And so she's known him his entire life. And I think having that one person who was really asking those questions about dignity of risk and making sure that we really looked at, is Sam making decisions now? And did we want to go to the court and declare that he could not make decisions? So she was a true She was the only one around the table who was really asking those questions, and I'm so thrilled that we had her in our corner asking those questions of not just me and Steve, of Sam, but also the team. So when it came right down to it, Sam wanted his driver's license. And at 18, he was in high school watching all of his friends learn to drive, watching all of his friends get a car. And even though we're not certain today that he will ever be able to drive, he's still struggled to pass that test. I didn't want to jerk that dream away from him. And the other real, one of the biggest reasons was I just wanted, I know people who have their own guardianship, and it seemed to me those folks were able to live the life they wanted to live. So we decided not even to do a limited guardianship, not to do full guardianship. We did take certain measures, however, to help protect Sam as he is a young adult and still learning to make decisions on his own. So we decided to do a medical power of attorney to help him make medical decisions, and a general power of attorney that would help assist us in him learning how to manage his money. And our goal is ultimately that he not need us for those as well. But we don't know. And so in the meantime, we're helping him learn to make good decisions, and we're helping him choose people in his life who can help him make good decisions. But not only that, he's deciding who those friends are in his circle. He's deciding who's trusted and who's not trusted. And so I think that's really powerful. Because I'm not going to be here forever. And I think for Sam, him learning to become a young adult and then an adult and then make decisions are what's going to be in his best interest down the road.
Have you had any situations, you covered a lot of my questions, but as you were talking, have there been some any decisions that you were like, wow, Sam, that was great, or uh-oh, this is going to be a learning experience?
I think that's pretty much every day. There's some times where we know that Sam struggles to make really good decisions. Sam is now in college. He is at Beyond Academics. And I will say that that's one prerequisite to be in that program is that you be your own guardian, because you are learning to be a young adult. You're learning to make decisions. You're learning to live independently. And so it's almost impossible to go through that program and you not be able to make decisions. So I did know that going into the guardianship thing, but now that he's in it, I recognize the power of him on a daily basis making those decisions. One of our biggest non-negotiables with him going to college, though, was that he would be able to independently take his medicine every day, because for that reason, that's when we see behaviors get bigger. So I think, first of all, as parents, Steve and I just thought, well, he'll never be able to do this, and we were so shocked that within 3 months, he was making or taking his meds on his own and filling his box up every week and making those really good decisions.
I think that shows, though, he was highly motivated. I'm going to stop it there and go to another section in her, because we kind of got started talking a little off task. Let's see. Okay, so I'm hoping this will work. The internet just kind of messed up. Okay.
Need to know is that even if you have a typical 18-year-old, like we have another one, all young adults will make, good and bad decisions. So it's not no different from one child to another.
Yeah.
We just hope that we've done a good job and that they know how to make those decisions. And that's what I think for Sam we want to make sure he knows how. If he doesn't know how to do something, to ask the right person.
That are learning about this topic?
I think one of the issues that we came up against was all the people who just sort of expected that we would do guardianship, and one of the groups was our high school IEP team. And I think for teachers, since this is directed towards administrators and teachers, is it shouldn't be an automatic. Just like the IEP team, we should sit around and discuss what are the pros and the cons. I think teachers need to realize that there has been a huge swing to go to guardianship in the last few years, and the pendulum will always swing, but now we're starting to take a look at what are the ramifications of doing that. And just like in IEPs and special education, least restrictive environment is what we should be looking at, not the most restrictive. And guardianship is the most restrictive. So let's sit down and really think about it and think about what the ramifications are. There's a higher amount of abuse. There's a higher amount of neglect for someone who's in guardianship. Not necessarily when you're with your parents, but down the road when mom and dad aren't there. So I think that needs to, those statistics need to be clear when we're sitting around the table making some of these decisions. And I think guardianship is something that some folks do need guardianship. There are cases where we need guardianship, but there's many more where other less restrictive alternatives can be just as good of a decision or a better decision.
Yeah, and I think so that was Stephanie explaining her journey with Sam. And next we're going to hear from Sam. And there was a little bit of a lag between my questions and his answers. So, but we filmed it and we got it out, so it was great. But this is Sam. I taught him when he was in middle school, and he is now at Beyond Academics. He was living on campus. He had to go home for a little bit because of coronavirus, but he's back now. So here he goes. Hi, I'm here with my friend who I have been lucky enough to know for the last many years, maybe 10 years. So I'm going to let him introduce himself. So Sam, can you tell us your name and where you go to school?
Well, my name is Sam. I go to school at UNCG, and I'm 20 years old.
Awesome. And Sam, do you live with your mom and dad?
Yeah, I live with my mom and dad.
Well, because of coronavirus you have, but do you have your own apartment?
Yep, I have my own apartment.
With roommates, right?
It's right near, with roommates, next to, not a couple miles of my parents' house.
Very cool.
It's not far away.
Good. So your parents can help, but you live on your own when you're at school. Sam, do you have a job?
Yeah. Yes.
Tell us where you work.
Absolutely. I have a Harris Gear is on location Lawndale Drive.
Okay, very cool. So Sam, we're talking about decision making and the importance of people of all abilities to make decisions for themselves. So let's talk a little bit about decisions you can make for you. So do your parents make every decision for you?
No.
No. You have the ability to make decisions for yourself. Like, who decides what you're going to eat every day?
Well, I'm going to eat today for breakfast is oatmeal.
Right. So Sam, you decide, right?
Yep. I'm decided to make some oatmeal for breakfast.
Good. And do you decide what clothes you're going to wear every day?
Well, I like to wear something like a t-shirt and some pants, and I like to do is long pants and then a khaki long pants and a collar t-shirt for work.
Right. Now, Sam, are you able to go vote?
Absolutely, I will go vote.
Yep. And you voted last time, right?
Yep.
Okay. And so, Sam, do you get to decide if you're going to have a girlfriend?
Yep.
Yep.
I'll have a girlfriend, and I want to have a first date with them.
Right. Those are decisions you can make. Now, there are some times where you have people that support you in decisions. So who helps you and supports you?
For you?
Say again.
For you?
I help support you. And who else in your life helps you make decisions?
For my parents and you.
Yep, your parents and you also have support staff, right?
Yeah, I have support staffs.
Yep. Okay, so you have people in your life that help you make decisions that could be harder. Tell me what your dreams are. Where do you want, what kind of job do you want?
My job for one is for a music career and a video production or video editing.
And you decided that job, right?
Yeah.
'Cause
Sorry?
Because that's something you enjoy. Your mom and dad didn't say, this is what you're going to do. Sam decided, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you want to get married one day?
Yeah. Someday I will get married, and anyways, I will get a job as a digital media studio.
That is awesome. That is I cannot wait because you've been wanting that for a long time. And Sam, where do you want to live? Do you want to stay in North Carolina?
I can't stay in North Carolina forever.
No. Where do you want to go?
I like to go to California, have lots of beaches, or maybe in the hills.
That'd be fun. Now, Sam, sometimes you have problems to deal with, right? Like I know recently we talked about trying to handle, you've got roommates and your kitchen. So who helped you talk through how to solve that problem? Do you have to do it by yourself or do you have help?
I have help.
Right. Who helps you?
Norma.
And did your mom and dad try to help talk through how to handle this problem?
Yep.
Did your mom and dad talk to you about how to handle it?
No.
Oh, they didn't. Okay, that's fine.
No. Say yes.
They did. Okay. Sam, I think it's important that you're able to make decisions for yourself.
Yes.
How does it make you feel to know you can make decisions? Does it make you feel happy or proud to be able to do that?
I'm proud.
You're proud.
Yeah.
If your mom and dad had to tell you everything and make all your decisions, would that lead you to feel purpose in your life or happy in your life, or would it make you feel bummed if your mom and dad made all of your decisions?
I'm still happy.
If your mom and dad made decisions for you?
No.
I didn't think so. You would not be happy if Steve and Stephanie told you everything you had to do, would you?
No.
No, because you're an adult.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, Sam. I appreciate you talking with me today. And just thought that was a good little personal story. Again, if you fill out the survey that will be located on the Randolph County website, we'll send you this PowerPoint and you will get all of these links so you can explore and have these resources for you. I think this is the petition. So this is the actual paperwork before they changed it. It's even linked in here that you would need to fill out to petition for guardianship. So we've even linked that. If you have questions, you can put them in the survey. Again, it's like 5-6 questions. You can put it down there and we'll get back to you. And again, if you look on the Randolph County webpage where you were directed to get this recorded webinar, there'll be a link for a quick survey, and we would really love for you to fill it out. We hope that you found today beneficial. It's a lot of information, so just soak it in, and if you have questions, we are here to help. Have a great day.